of a Yoruba proverb that posits òwe lẹ́ṣin ọ̀rọ̀. Bí ọ̀rọ̀ bá sọnù, òwe la fi ń wá. In this presentation, we submit, stories are people's horse. When meaning disappears into oblivion, it is on the back of stories they ride back to reality. If we must stretch the metaphor of horses further, it will take us to the universe of a place of stories in the study of teaching and teacher education. In this field, the concept of using stories for self-reflection, and I quote, represents a way of knowing and thinking that is particularly suited to explicating the issues that we deal. End of quote. The issues with which we as language teachers confront in class may be different from the method for resolving the issues because they belong to the same theoretical family if examined in a systematic way. Eliot, in 1993, argues that when teachers monitor their own practices, they bring such theories into the conscious realm of reflection, which enables them to test and modify them through experimental action. On the strength of Carter and Eliot's propositions, I wish to reconstruct just 5 years from 2001 to 2006 of my journey within an American classroom as a Yoruba language instructor. In those 5 years, I learned as much from the students as I have learned about myself and my social location as an immigrant far from home. Teaching Yoruba as a second/foreign language in an American setting brings 3 issues: pedagogy, technology, and the relationship of African language programs with host departments. Each of these issues demands not just a casual mention, but in-depth attention. They just must not be told in a hurry. As you all may know, time is one commodity that constrains an elegant retelling of what the eyes have seen and the ears heard in a short time frame for this account. Therefore, not to burden my metaphorical horse on its way back to reality, I will start my story from the end instead of paying heed to the Yoruba wisdom that counsels that eaters of steamed bean cake should start from the fringe of it. Ejeka ti ibi pelebe mo leje is what the Yoruba say. But in my case, I am going to switch it around and I would start the eating of my ole from the ibigegele. In essence, the teaching philosophy as set down captures the trials, possible conceptual and methodological errors, and all being well, as my practice evolved, the errors paled into insignificance as triumphs are delivered or will be delivered in the nearest future. So let me open myself up and present to you my teaching philosophy. The philosophy is a response to my first 5 years, like I've said, as a Yoruba instructor of a second language. It reflects my interaction with other teachers who have been in this field longer than myself. And one of such teachers, I wish he signed on today, is Professor Akinloye Ojo, the son of the one and only Bamiji Ojo, the man who for many years was the presenter-producer of Shodabe on OYO. He remains one of my mentors. He remains one of those I run to when I barely knew my left from my right. The students over the years have taught me a great deal, and I have constantly incorporated their concerns in my lesson plans. I am a strong believer in creating relaxed learning forums where learners feel happy to interact without inhibition of making mistakes when uncertain. I constantly appeal to the three domains of knowledge, namely the cognitive, the affective, and the psychomotor. This way, learning becomes lifelong and fun. Teaching for me is a continuous dialogue between the teacher, the learners, and the institution that provides the structural support for the interactions. I am never tired of telling the students that learning a second language is one great opportunity to acquire skills that will be useful in other fields of endeavor. I make them aware of their inner abilities, their listening skills, and the power of imagination. I teach to widen the potential cultural scope of those who speak the same language that I speak and its cultural norms that gives my life meaning. I want you to take note of that, how teaching the language and the cultural norms give meaning to me as a person. These aspects are implicit and never enforced. After all, the classroom is a marketplace of ideas. Reason and persuasion are the acceptable currencies we spend. My goals are modest for the different levels I teach. The non-heritage speakers are assisted to lay a solid foundation and to whet their appetite to want to continue learning. To the heritage speakers, our co-constructed goals are cultural maintenance and demonstration of the utility of the language and its cultural norms for research. So you would see that in every class, there are two different streams. There are the heritage speakers that already have a sense of a language. There are the non-heritage speakers that don't even understand what we call Wang Pao. But their agenda and their objectives are different, and we must cater for both of them. So let's, like they say, the devil is in the details. So details of my classroom engagement. Remember, this was my very first 5 years, and I was what you will call a PTL. So as a part-time lecturer, it was possible over time to make quickly a distinction between language learning strategies and language use strategies. I used questionnaires at the beginning and at the end of the semester to monitor learners' behavior, monitor progress, and try to deduce what they are thinking about the course. I promote what I call associative memory, recall, instead of direct memorization. I encourage the learners to link what is learned in class with daily activities in their lives and to objects they see around them. The most important method is the creation of a non-threatening class atmosphere that encourages them to participate in class and after-class activities. As to language use strategies, these come in handy during the various after-class activities planned with native speakers in communities near to us. The students, through skits, role play, and simulation of cultural activities, utilize what they already learned in class. My main objective is to work within their different learning styles. The Department of Africana Studies at Rutgers University adopted the communicative approach to the teaching of African languages. My interpretation, which I have shared with other colleagues, of a communicative approach is to lay solid foundations for learners to be able to speak a second language in a lucid way within the shortest possible time. It is not about knowing the technicalities of the language, but an ability to understand both the sense and the sound of a language. To achieve this, I developed a 10-week language laboratory workbook/logbook as a supplement to weekly written assignments. The expectation is that learners record on audio tape. Remember, that was long, long ago when we still use audio tapes. in the analog days. So they record their attempts at constructing simple responses to questions asked. In addition, we designed a telephone conversation project in collaboration with advanced non-native speakers at the University of Georgia, where my one and only mentor, Professor Akinloye Ojo, is the director of the Institute for African Studies. The objective is to encourage students to share ideas and be part of an emerging community of learners. The premise for this was our understanding that learning a second language like Yoruba should not be in isolation. I wanted to discourage individual learners who prefer to compete, but in its place, encourage collaboration. As part of my teaching philosophy, elders from the communities around the immediate vicinity were encouraged to visit and interact with the learners. Apart from the communicative approach, I designed my lesson plans from the perspective of the learners. Over time, I have become aware of what the learner wants to know, the minimum learners should know, and how to strike a balance between both of these essentials. In the process of striking a balance, I attempted to avoid the bad experience of humiliating slow learners. The audio tape experiment, which I mentioned above, was designed to build confidence in learners and help solve communication apprehension for those afflicted with such a problem. In line with reforming my teaching methods, I have slightly modified the Language Lab workbook/logbook. It now includes recording of peer tutoring sessions. Learners are encouraged to seek out native speakers who can further reinforce or explain to them areas in the course they find difficult. I then review the sessions recorded. This way, I hoped to solve the problem of learners reading from scripts instead of learning how to engage spontaneously in conversations. So let's do a little self-analysis of a philosophy. At this point, it becomes imperative to give flesh to the bare bones of my story so far. The teaching philosophy, of course, signposts my experience so far and captures my reflection of what techniques and methods I tried. I have spiced the account with as many recognizable tropes and conventions as possible. To those teachers who are online with us, like Tola or Shonoga and Tosin, I'm sure, and some others I cannot pick out right now, they will probably recognize where I'm coming from. So I knew none of this when I started with about 34 students. And I repeat it again, when I started to teach Yoruba at Rutgers, there were 34 students, but they were mostly heritage learners. And one of those heritage learners is the Akaba Shorun, the young woman who does The View on TVC. She was one of those students that showed up at Rutgers many years ago. And they wanted to take advantage of a new Nigerian, me, to the department. Most of these students were friends, and they came with the mindset that the class was going to be an easy fare, a walk in the woods, if you like. The director of the program, Professor Husseina, who gave listening ears to my cries and provided me with pedagogical directions, only made the baptism of fire of the first semester bearable. I was experiencing for the first time in my life a new learner-teacher power relations, so far removed from my cultural experience. The socio-political environment of the United States, of this country, I want to assume, must have provided the students with the boldness to speak back to me at the least provocation. I have since made it one of action research interest to understand the nature of learners who register for the courses or for the Yoruba class. The attitude of learners to education as a whole, and specifically to language learning, demands an intergenerational dialogue. The outcome is its resolution and subsequent incorporation into future policies and programs. How do you cope/deal with students who only want to learn what will be on the test? Let me say that slowly, because if there's any language teacher on this forum, that will ring a bell. How do you cope? Deal with students who only want to learn what will be on the test. Apart from improvisations of resources and methods of teaching, seeking out real-life situations for students to perform what they learned in class was one of the main planks of my classroom practice. There was a year we visited the home of a Yoruba family as a means of exposing the students to some core values of Yoruba culture. At another time, we were lucky to have members of Egbe Omo Yoruba visit us and participate in a cultural fest organized by the students themselves. In each of the situations, it was difficult to quantify the effect on the learners. External voices and faces assisted what was learned in class in a totally informal way. As traditional storytellers are wont of repeating, what have my ears not heard, and what have my eyes not seen? I have been accused of taking my job too seriously. I have been threatened by students who misjudged my willingness to be supportive and considerate during the semester as a sign of weakness. I have listened to stories that sounded so much like truth, only to find out that I was only being taken for a ride. Yet, in the midst of all the lies and manipulations, I've had my fair share of self-motivating learners who genuinely thirst for knowledge and were prepared to go the extra length it takes to learn a language and the associated culture. Ladies and gentlemen, I must conclude this very brief presentation. And I've attempted to place my evolving story on a critical slab for analysis. The narrative is presented against the backdrop of Carter's proposition that, I quote, stories or storytelling represents a way of knowing and thinking that is particularly suited to explicating the issues with which we deal, end of quote. Some recurrent issues encountered during the course of 5 years have served as touchstones and milestones to my evolving story as a teacher in an American university. Issues like motivation of students, innovative ways of course promotion, establishment of class-community nexus, and experiences with mentorship weaves into the tapestry of a story. Like I said, the main objective was not entertainment, but I hope I have set into motion possibilities for dialogue and recommend ways to respond cooperatively and constructively to the new challenges in the teaching of Yoruba in America as a second language. The triumphs will come when certain dreams begin to bear fruition, when high schools in America begin to contribute to the present stream from which we draw. The teaching of Yoruba in America will take on new wings when a synergy is created with departments such as Latin American Studies, African Religious Studies, and philosophy, and begin to appreciate the cultural window Yoruba brings into the mix. It is fast becoming obvious that the classroom is not the only site for teaching Yoruba as a second language in America. The family, the community, the church in which they attend, and all the various imported media products especially those online, are all places where the language could be learned, but we still need quality control. We still need a standardized orthography that is not found on most of those sites. Most language teachers may not dispute the observation that the mix of students in terms of their motivation contributes to the performance and output of the efforts invested into each teaching episode. Looking back now, I can say without equivocation that my greatest mistake was the undue centrality of a learner as a means of creating a very different learning environment from what obtains in other classes. So this is one end or one part of my presentation. Now, the other part, let me just take a break. Let me take a break and find out if there are questions, if there are interventions, especially the names of those I have mentioned. I would like contributions. And then I have a little piece, just as an example of the kind of things I do. And I would also like to acknowledge the presence of the president of the African Studies Association in Europe. She's Professor Amanda. She's here as well, and we thank her for coming. So let me just have a break for now, and if there are any interventions, Tola, I know that Tola taught at SOAS, and so he definitely has something to say. Samantha teaches film. She must have encountered some of the things that I've said. So if there are contributions, I would take, so I just want to have a little break, and then I will pick it from there. The other part of it is just purely entertainment. So any contributions, any questions I can take before I go on to the final. Convener, unmute yourself. You're mute.
Thank you so much. People have to remind me of this all the time because just like everybody else, I go on mute even though I'm moderating the program. Thank you for that. That was really compelling. It was gripping. It was. It actually sounded like a pitch for. I was going to say, are you contesting the presidency of the United States of America? So that was like a pitch for public office. That was rich, and I particularly love the fact that for people like us who look up to many of you out there who actually are very who are in the who do whatever it takes to to all the rich cultures of the different parts of the world who go the extra mile in trying to project them, in trying to protect them, in trying to harness them into something of a force for good. You wouldn't know how many people actually look up to you from afar. And I love the fact that you concentrated on quite a lot of you told a lot of the stories of the errors. It is people who are successful, people who are in public office. There's always this tendency to always look at them and believe that, everything has just been hunky-dory. He just got to America and everything started working. And there were no challenges in the teaching of the language. There was no resistance. There was, but when we have things like this, it does put things in proper perspective. And I will be coming to that. Of course, we're going to be taking quite a lot of questions to grip, but I do believe that the respectful thing to do right now before we come to that is to actually also, I know you did recognize and mention Amanda, I believe Amar. I hope I got that right. So, and straight away, I just did a quick search. You know, there's certain people that they're like goldfishes. You know, they can't really hide much. There's so much about them out there. Amanda Amar is research professor at the Center of African Studies, Copenhagen University, Denmark. She has researched and published on agrarian change, local government, state-making, sovereignty, displacement, and crisis in Southern Africa, with a special focus on Zimbabwe and less so on Mozambique. There's quite a lot there. That's I believe that's from your publishers, Bloomsbury Publishing, and of course there's quite a lot out there, really. You know, so you know, there's certain people when you're looking for them, you just know you'll get that info. So Amanda, I believe it's just let's give you the floor for 5 minutes. If you've got, we have
thank you.
As long as you want to take, yeah. So let's.
I was not expecting to talk, and I really apologize. I'm away from home, and I wasn't able to come earlier. So, but thank you for welcoming me, and I appreciate the particular attention. Not that it was expected. I want to thank KOLE so much. First of all, we met first in a conference, I think it was in Edinburgh, the European African Studies Association conference, where I co-chaired a panel on teaching African studies from different places in the world. And that was an incredibly rich combination of people and presentations, and we stayed in touch. So I really appreciate that I was even told about this session, and want to appreciate very much your presentation, and really sorry I missed it. But I would like to actually, I am in African studies. I am Zimbabwean myself. So to be part of sort of African studies in Europe is as a white African, but as an African studies activist, I would call myself. So the kinds of questions that KOLE you're bringing to the table, I'm a little interested to ask you one particular point, and you may have said something about it earlier. You're teaching Yoruba in American universities. There's two sides to this question. One is, what are the comparative examples with people teaching, you know, say, any of the other African languages? I mean, is Yoruba, has it got a particular status? Has it got a particular meaning in sort of teaching environments? That's one question. And the other is a comparative with other so-called foreign languages in America. Are there questions? You said students are so motivated by what they can get tested on, but what are these experiences of othering, whether it's Yoruba or other African languages, or Yoruba and other non-African languages in these university environments? I'd love to hear something about that.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much for that question. What I didn't say, and you didn't miss it, and deliberately I didn't mention this. When you're addressing a group of Africans about teaching African language in another culture, there is always the fixation on language as an educational issue, that we're teaching just because of education, or they think that the funding comes from the Department of Education. In America, differently, teaching of African languages is supported by the Department of Defense. It is a defense issue.
Says a lot.
It is a defense issue. And I think the sooner Africans recognized the potentiality of languages, the better for a lot of us. You know, yes, I talked about the communicative approach, but yes, you want to have your citizens learn a language during peacetime. You don't want to get into a situation where you need to understand what the others are saying before you start raising and training them. Learning a language in the United States of America is a citizen issue. It is not explicitly told to the students, but we as teacher agents know that what we are preparing, we're preparing sometimes, some of the times, middle-level intelligence officers.
Mm.
It is just one small part of it. I'm not saying it's the whole part. There are the graduate students presently.
Anthropologists and so on.
Yes, the graduate students from religion that came to my class from the first semester beginning and 2 semesters of intermediate. He's Chinese and he's presently in a part of Nigeria. And he can hold a decent conversation. So that's another subset. Okay, so as you go along in this, just put it somewhere that language learning is not just an academic issue. It is not just something that you want to encourage them to learn the culture. It also can serve other purposes. Now you asked about the authoring of Yoruba, vis-a-vis other African languages. Swahili is a king of language learning and teaching in America. You don't, please, there's even no debate about this.
Yeah.
Wherever you turn, and I'm sure even in Europe, Swahili is king. Why?
Actually, we also teach it at our small Center of African Studies. It's the only language we do teach, yeah.
Why? Because Lion King has Hakuna Matata. There is a way to bring them in. There is Swahili. There is Safari that the students love to go to. And the relative peace and calm before Al-Shabaab started to throw stones into that. So Swahili is king. I mean, when you're talking about language learning in America, it is always Swahili. Now, in the 60s, Hausa was a hot button too. It's coming back. So Hausa language is also coming back. Now, the reason why Yoruba even makes a showing at all is because we have the bifurcation of African Americans who want to learn Yoruba, not for communicative reasons, but for religious reasons. And these are people who spend as much as $3,000 US. I don't know how much that would be in Europe. $3,000 US for initiation in Nigeria. They readily pay. I have never, I'm not a part of that, but I know that they take, there are people, the initiates who go. So Yoruba also enjoys the fact that in comparative literature, people like Professor Akiade Shokon in Indiana University, who uses his knowledge of Yoruba language, he does translations. There's Pamela Smith, they do translation from Yoruba to English. There's Professor Adeleke, who all try to push the Yoruba agenda. Where we try our best, but I don't think that when we come into the forum of language teachers, we will not be the last, but definitely we're not the first. And there are reasons why other languages, Amharic, and it's in different places in America, and I'm sure in Europe too, the language that is taught. But so far, we've been very lucky to have even people like Professor Toye Falola, who will not sleep, until nearly everything that is publishable about Yoruba language is published. He has an encyclopedia, he has a compendium of Yoruba issues, he has books written, he has the history of Yoruba. There is hardly anything. Probably the only thing that is left for him to publish will be getting into nanotechnology, Yoruba and nanotechnology. And I say that like a joke, but Professor Omotosho, who is now in South Africa, has been thinking very hard on how he can begin to bring in issues as deep as nanotechnology. But Dr. Fakelede has made it his life business, a project for life, to translate scientific terms into Yoruba. There's a dictionary. He wants all his, he has a PhD in chemistry. I think he's a chemical engineer, but I know chemistry is part of his life. And he wants to, he now has a website. So these are people and personalities on ground that are doing things. I hope I attempted. Okay.
Okay. Professor Amanda, what was your take on that? Are you okay with that? Okay, you're muted.
Please open the floor to other people to share their thoughts. Mm-hmm.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so we'll be coming back to you shortly. Now, I believe that Doctor did mention Dr. Tola Agumbiade, I believe. What did you say, sir?
Dr. Tola Oshunuga.
Oshunuga. Thank you so much. Tola Oshunuga. I know you did make mention of that. And I would be. So Dr. Tola Oshunuga, we want to get your perspective on that, especially the aspects that that brought up your name, you know. So we're discussing something today that is, and I'm already, usually this has become like a cliche, more or less, we say it all the time. But, you know, the fact is, once we start going very deep into these topics, then we just realize that, you know what, 2 hours isn't going to do justice to them. As it is, 1 hour is gone. We've not really gotten anywhere, so we're going to have to do a part 2 of it. But Dr. Tola Oshunuga, if you just want to unmute yourself, let's get your perspective on this.
Let me say thank you very much for the organizers, as well as the presenter, Dr. Odutola, and Professor Hammer. You are all welcome. Dr. Odutola has said so much regarding teaching of Yoruba in diaspora, as I always call it. It's a big challenge, really. I have started teaching Yoruba since 1991. That's the earliest I could remember when I first finished from College of Education. And all my degrees has been in Yoruba up to PhD, Yoruba. But it's a different ballgame when you come to teach Yoruba, either in America and as I've done in United Kingdom. Different ballgame because you are dealing with different set of people with different ideology. And because of that, you find yourself in a kind of, in a fix, really, because you want to pander to the interests of the employer, the interests of the students, the interests of the community. You find yourself. So while you are trying to navigate this interest, then you become handicapped sometimes. It is a challenge. It goes beyond this Yoruba we speak when it comes to teaching of the language in this part of the world. I've never found this challenge when I was in Nigeria, because I taught people who are native language, I'm a speaker. So you just delve into the literature aspect of it, cultural aspect of it, you do comparative aspect of it. But when you come to this part of the world, you are dealing with different sets of people. You have native speaker, you have heritage speakers, you have new learners entirely that don't know anything about the language. And like Dr. Odutola pointed out, the native speaker who have come to your class, they came not because they want to learn the language, but because they want to get the mark. Because they knew that they're going to score good mark. There's no way about that. But what I've done in my own end here at SOAS University of London is to say, look, young lady or young man, this is not meant for you. I will be sincere with them. This is not meant for you. The philosophy at SOAS is that every student that passes through that school must learn a language, either Asian or African language. You must learn one. So if you are a Yoruba speaker, a native speaker, and now you are saying you want to learn Yoruba again, for what purpose? The purpose is defeated. Can't you use that time to learn another language? Some will say, no, they will still, because they have the right to stay in your class, and they score 90 sometimes, because you just have to do that. But my problem with teaching Yoruba in this part of the world is that as teachers, we are doing our best. The community are trying. But the government in Europe, it might be different in America, where the fence pays the bill. Here, the school pays the bill here, and the student pay the bill as well, because the government, they've used SOAS in the past to achieve their, whatever outcome they wanted. So they've abandoned SOAS to its own problem. So what exactly can we do really to expand the scope of teaching Yoruba in diaspora? That's just my own area of interest. It is becoming worrisome to me as an individual, because even in Nigeria, where we came from, how many young children speak this language the way it should be spoken? I worry sometimes when I listen to Yoruba news on the television or on the radio. When I read Yoruba newspapers, I become very worried that we are losing it. We now raise a generation of children who could not speak English properly. They could not write English properly. And the language that they were born with, the native language, Yoruba, they could not use justice. So they cannot use it effectively. So what exactly are we doing? And that is why I want to say to you, the organizer, the convener, that freedom comes with language. Language is the vehicle for freedom. So at home, what can we do to make sure that this language, it won't go into extinction like some people fear, but we might end up having the bastardized Yoruba as we're having it now. So Dr. Odutola, I only say well done for the presentation. You've done much. I don't have any questions for you, but I just want to see how more can we collaborate in Europe, in America, to redefine the future of Yoruba studies. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Dr. Shonuga, that was, thank you so much for the angle you introduced to it. Thank you for the insight. Thank you, because quite a lot of the things you said also corroborated what Dr. said. And all of a sudden, I am thinking, so it is even difficult to teach. It's just, it just brings it all in. And, I'm happy that we're getting all these deeper, reflections on all the different aspects of, the cultural, transferring some of the cultural riches, I know Dr. Oshonuga did say at the point, I know you asked the question, which I'm going to go to Doctor with, but I'm also, there are times I've sat down to the Europeans. They brought Christianity to Africa, for example. And it's like when you've now gotten to their own place, it is like Christianity is more or less gone. So we are now bringing it back to them. Just like the palm oil, that was Nigeria to, I believe, Malaysia, and now we do not export. Nigeria does not export this commodity in sufficient quantity anymore. There's a question from Amanda, which you also go to, so I'm like, is there that risk? I know Dr. Shonuga said there is that fear is actually misplaced, that the language can actually become extinct. But is there that risk that it is the Brazilians, the Americans, the Europeans that will now be bringing back that will now be the custodians of these ancient language? These are some things. So I believe that there are three questions there, in addition to Amanda's one, Dr. Oshonuga's one, Amanda's comment, and obviously the last one as well. So, Dr. Odutola, back to you, sir.
Well, thank you very much. You would have noticed that it's like I can hardly say anything without invoking the name of Professor Akinle Yojo. Well, we call him Oba is a king amongst, my generation. I mean, he's one of those few linguists that hold the hands of others. And I'm sure he has a number of us under his wings. He has a project which involves global Yoruba, the whole idea of the interconnection. Before him, General Ishola Williams had been campaigning to have what he called the global Yoruba, to look into the different geopolitical areas in which Yoruba is spoken and bring them all together in some way. I'm sure you all know that there is Trinidadian Yoruba. There's in fact a book on Trinidadian Yoruba. There is Yoruba in Cuba. There are Yoruba people who still speak Yoruba, who still name their children Yoruba in Sierra Leone, the Anagos. You still have them in Benin, the Obas in Benin, and the ones in Cotonou and the rest. So, yes, how can we bring all of this together? How can we bring synergy? One of the things I tell everybody is the Yoruba you are hearing us talk about is actually a made-up language. It's supposed to be called the Pan-Yoruba language, because Yoruba people are still in the process of becoming. In terms of language, Ekiti, the Ekiti dialect, or the Jesha dialect, or the Jebu, or the Ife, will trump over all of these things I'm talking about. And to those who don't know, if you go to Ondo State and listen to them speak what you think is Yoruba, you might not even understand. If you go to Ibadan, yes, what we're saying, what we're speaking is very close to it. It's very, but you would know that the way it is spoken is not the same way that we teach it. So what we teach actually, if you allow me this expression, is synthetic Yoruba. Mm-hmm. It's made up. But when you get to the Santeria group, the Latinos, I don't even understand the Yoruba at all. I don't. And they say things, and I try to make sense of it. It's the same thing with the Yorubas, the African Americans speak. In that community of the Ifa community, they say things that I tell them, it sounds Yoruba, but I don't know what it means. We are at that crossroad now where what can we really do? How do we bring together these various Yoruba versions? And even the question of how Yoruba is taught. The last paper that Professor Akilo Yujo presented at the conference had to do with that, had to do with mapping. We still need to map where Yoruba is spoken in different parts of the world. How is it taught? Where is it taught? Who is teaching it? What is the philosophy? There's still a lot of work to be done. But you know, when a man has elephantiasis of the scrotum, you do not even, when they're sharing malaria, you probably excuse such a person. This is the situation with Yoruba teachers in the diaspora. The load we are carrying is so heavy that the other things that we have to do, we have not been able to pay attention to. Now, let me read Professor Amanda's question. Are there ways in which the value of Yoruba can be encouraged at different levels and different contexts, such as establishing writing prizes, for example? Yes. In fact, in my younger days, when I first started this job, I thought that if you have an idea and you share it with your colleagues and it will benefit them, those were my errors, that everybody will run with it and they will be glad. I mean, I said I was going to put a seed amount of money so that we can give prizes to the best Yoruba student in any of universities in America. Of course, you see, you need to understand the politics that we're going through. It's a pity that time is not ripe enough for me to comment on my 2006 to present at University of Florida, because I still want my job, But as soon as the time is ripe and I have to look back, I have a lot more to say, a lot more to say, But the problem is not the value of Yoruba. It is also the fact that students and learners cannot easily go to Nigeria anymore. Parents who don't understand geography, let me put it that mildly, or who have little respect for or are challenged by geography, think that Boko Haram is so close to Ibadan. And that when they hear that there is kidnapping in Northeast, they would ask, are you sure that our children are safe? So more and more, it is becoming very difficult for Howard University to raise 12 students across America to go to Nigeria to study Yoruba. We're facing that challenge. We're also facing the challenge of the drop in numbers. The interest that we had in those days, I don't know. They say it's cyclical, it just changes. It is changing now. But I get your point. The value, we would like to see how we can increase the value. Whatever any suggestion an outsider will give, will probably sell more to the powers that be and to the various umbrella organizations that are in charge of Yoruba language education. I really don't have an answer to that one, but it is not something new. It is something that I have considered, but at the point in which I am, in my life as a teacher there, 2006 to 2021 is quite a lot. That I have, my ears have heard and my eyes have seen, but I soldier on, waiting for the time when I can write my memoirs. But yeah, I have a long list of things. I went into the College of Medicine. I was invited to make presentations for 1 hour when the students are having their lunch to talk about health, Yoruba, and the concept of health. And I thought the students would be excited, but while I talked, they just ate and was like, look, we are medical students here. Who are you? And who did I think I was? Trying to talk to medical students, especially orthodox medicine, about the differences in Yoruba herbal medicine and the Western pharmacopoeia, of course. But I still, these are things I believe strongly, that if we can begin to infuse at that level. Even there is a student at University of Florida that went to study Yoruba architecture, and names that the different things are called, the beams and all of that. But they felt, I don't know what the college thought about, but he got money and she made a presentation, and there's somebody presently working on that aspect as we speak in Nigeria. There are even business, the question of business and Yoruba language and the nature of business. Because you heard me say something like competition and collaboration. The basis of Yoruba business is collaboration as opposed to competition. If you've ever heard of the Yoruba Nollywood, I tell everybody there are 3 A's: A, that supports that venture. One is Arokodoko. You come to my farm, I come to your farm. It's the kind of things Africans do. You barter your labor. And that was how the artisanal film industry for the Yoruba people started. The actors would go and act in one person's film, and they would go to another person's film. And then you will come to theirs. That is Arokodoko. The next R in it is Atenudenu, the mode of production, of promotion of the Yoruba films was from mouth to mouth. They did not need to take out. They did take promotions from TV stations, but the Yoruba way in which the film will sell is from mouth to mouth. So word of mouth. And finally, the last one is called Atawodo. Somebody, in those days when it was tapes, somebody will buy the tape, will watch it, so will tell somebody else, and they were passing it on. So you could see that this is using the Yoruba concept and culture, even in cinema and film studies. We've already done the pharmacy, we've done the chemistry. Maybe there are other African cultures. When my grandmother would grind beans, she would put charcoal in the middle of it. And nobody explained it to me why it was being done. But it was later we found out the properties of charcoal being able to absorb carbon dioxide so that it does not mix with the beans that has been ground, so that it doesn't turn to mild acid called carbon. This is Yoruba. I can start from the Yoruba and go to the chemistry. Start from the Yoruba and go to business. Start from Yoruba and go to film studies. So yes, we can add value to it, but the institutions for now are still in silos. And I don't think it's in my lifetime. I am already, once you start feeling old, you're counting number of days. I don't think it will be, probably will be in the generation of people like Tosin. She might be the ones to carry the new torch and to bring about new life. And I'm sure she's doing, maybe the convener would let her also make some contribution. Let me go to Samantha's, apart from the visitations outside your learning sessions, could you provide a few more examples of how Yoruba language learners are exposed to the cultures of Yoruba? Yeah, of course, in this present age of the internet, they are very well exposed. There are different channels, Yoruba channels on everything, from movies to news to newspapers. They are all there. But I tell you, there's nothing that beats that visitation. It's like an organic museum when they actually go there and see the way the Yoruba people live. They listen to the music for that day or for the time in which they're there. They listen to the music, they eat the food, they see the people dress and all of it. But apart from the visitation, I also encourage students, look, the truth of the matter, I can say it like theory. Nobody has ever done it, so forget it. I don't like to deceive myself, but look, it was a very exciting thing for me to say to them, there are events that are happening outside of the campus, held by Yoruba people. Why don't you attend one and try and talk to somebody in the party, or even the Nigerian independence anniversary? Are you going to give us extra credit for that? Sorry. No, even to go and eat and enjoy yourself and use what you have learned, I should give you extra credit for doing that. Okay, forget it. So there are too many. Yes, these things look good on paper to expose them to other things. But even the ones in which we take them to somebody's house, you have to provide the transport. And, with America, even the thing they eat there, if the department hears of it, you need to sign papers that they are not going to kill them, or they are not going to die because they ate a foriro, vegetable, or they ate what is that thing? Iru, the thing Yoruba people put in the food, and it smells like it's dead bodies. This thing, can you imagine? You know that I taught a class of food once. You need to read the reaction of the students to even eba that you are used to, Gary, that everybody, when they describe it, sometimes I look up and down. Is it the same Gary that I eat with okra? To them, the only word that can describe okra is slimy, like something in the gutter. Anyway, let's not go to those places. But I hear you.
Thanks very much. Okay. Thanks very much for that, KOLE. I think the follow-up question to that would be: how might the academic agitations for the decolonization of curricula mediate such tensions of responses to African, to Yoruba language or Yoruba cultural areas like the food and the histories and the reactions to the food and the histories? I hear you on when you talk about the risk assessment that must be signed before students go to try out Yoruba food. So how might we action such learning structures in a way that is decolonized, that the culture is taught with, like one would teach the English literature or English language study?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank God Professor Amanda is here. I think, look, let's be politically incorrect for the first time. This whole decolonized thing is European agenda. I'm not sure that this decolonizing has really taken root in American institutions. At least where I am, I don't hear of anybody talking about decolonization. It would have been fantastic, to actually deprogram the mind of students along those areas. But what we are still looking for now at this point is a synergy between Latin American studies, African American program. I thought that those are low-hanging fruits. The Latin American, wherever. I have been to Colombia, I've been to Bogota. There are people who remind me of their grandfathers who had Yoruba names. And they want me, there are Babalawos in Colombia. I had a little health challenge. They wanted to take me to one of them, but it was for time. In Colombia. No, they're there. And we have a Latin American program. Ask me, what is Yoruba doing there? Why is Yoruba not a part of it? Up till today, we have been campaigning on that. So I hear you clearly about the decolonization, which is getting a lot of traction in Europe. I don't know whether it is gaining that much traction in American institutions. What we need to do now, our first thing, and once we do that, will be to get into the idea of, let's first form these units, the African Americans. Why would an African American not be interested in learning Yoruba? Why? Why are the departments not coming together? I can't answer that question. No, and Dr. Tola says decolonization of a language and culture, especially in the UK, is not, he says, feasible, at least for now, because the colonial tendencies have not been shed. I think he has his hand up. He probably might defend himself because, he was a SOAS and he can tell you, well, and Tosin too. Tosin should be allowed to say something too after Tola.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Honestly, this is, I want to thank everybody who has contributed. Of course, we're going to Dr. Oshonuga next. And of course, Dr. Odutola has been talking about Tosin again and again and again. And definitely have a say. But once again, I just want to appreciate, look, I do not want anybody here to actually see anything as disrespect of any kind. we've got a huge panel today. I've just actually been having a look at. Just want to appreciate Dr. Oshonuga was of the, I believe, School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London, you know, and he's got quite a lot of footprints on the nets, you know, so he's another goldfish. And I saw the name Iwowo, and like this name rings a bell, and it was me. Apparently, I believe this is the lady who wrote quite a lot of the episodes of the daily drama Tinsel. Is it Tinsel? If I'm correct, you know. And I'm like, wow, I just knew. I was like, this name rings a bell. Thank you so much for joining us. I believe she's a senior lecturer in directing drama for film and television, both University. Samantha Iwowo is a screenwriter. She's a director or researcher, you know, and I believe quite a lot of those productions with Mnet. Of course, I believe it's Africa Magic or something, South Africa's largest cable network, you know. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Oshonuga. And I believe that quite the others have just not come round to checking you out, you know, so please do not. And of course, we have Professor Amanda Hammer. We've got a this evening, and I want to thank all of you for as soon as I get your profile, of course, I'm just going to do it. So please, once again, I apologize. It is not out of disrespect. It's just that I did not know. But all of a sudden, the names are just striking me, and I'm like, these are names I've always known, and I thank God. Finally, I'm putting a face to many of them. So, Dr. Dr. Oshonuga is a very big one. So let's go to Tosin, because I know Doctor will have a lot of things to say. Dr. Oshonuga, please, I want to crave your indulgence. Please let us go to Tosin first, because I know you would, because there's certain questions I even want to ask of you, Dr. Oshonuga. So please, let's go to Tosin Ashaolu first. Tosin Ashaolu, please feel free to make your contribution. You're muted, so just press the unmute button. Fantastic.
Hi there. Sorry, Dr. Odutola, you've put me on the spot. I was just very happy to enjoy everything and all the contributions. I'm an MA student of African Studies at SOAS at the moment, and that's how it was on a webinar that I actually got to meet Dr. Odutola, and I've just been riveted listening to all that you've had to say and discovering and learning about you as a real force for culture promotion, language promotion, and everything. I'm just in absolute awe. My issue, I've come into, I mean, you'll hear my accent, etc. I moved to the UK age 10, kept language. Unfortunately, haven't taught my children the language, but I at a certain point in my life, I think I got to the point where I trying to out English the English and realizing that I may be British, but I'll never be invited to the English party, etc. So that set me, I think, on a track of like, hello, your own culture, your own heritage has been put down somewhat, not encouraged. I was in a household where the speaking of Yoruba wasn't celebrated or encouraged necessarily, and the amount of English that you spoke was valued more. But I think something's happened, at least the likes of me, within the last couple of years with the Black Lives Matter movement and things coming to the fore, that I think that perhaps, well, certainly some of us in the diaspora are realizing that there's a piece of us, there's a piece of us that we have allowed to be made less by a colonial mentality. And I think I agree with Samantha there about, the need to decolonize. The unfortunate thing, I think, is that I don't actually know who's come up with the decolonization agenda and to what end, because it just sounds like something really a la mode at the moment, of the moment. Everybody's talking about, finding your own personal biases, decolonizing. And I think that if diasporic Africans took that upon themselves and owned that project, then I'd be all for it. At the moment, I can quote SOAS, School of Oriental and African Studies, yet I'm sure Dr. Oshonuga would agree with me that the A in SOAS is rapidly disappearing. I can count the number of faculty within the African Studies department on perhaps just one hand. And yet we're talking about decolonizing, we're talking about, reclaiming things. And I just wonder who's framing the agenda and who is, is it not just some buzzword that's being thrown around at the moment? And I don't want to waffle. I think that was the thing that stood out for me the most to comment on. And I also apologize, I have to run on to another call as well. But thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Can I quickly respond to Tosin's submission, please?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi Tosin. Thanks very much for your contribution. Interesting to listen to. I like to. I'm trying to pick my words. I'd like to reiterate, because I think that it must have been iterated prior to these conversations we're having, that the decolonization agenda is not a European agenda. Because if we, the very summary definition of postcolonial studies in itself, the underpinning structure of the decolonization movement, which has been in force since the 1960s, if we are bringing into account the writings of Fanon, which underpins several of the trajectories it has taken from that point. However, and then when it became a full force conversation in academia, it began in Malaysia by a convergence of African scholars who began to insist on the need for learning to be a narrative of a sort of nod from one culture to the other, or from different cultures. And so when I hear counter arguments to the decolonization movement as a buzzword, I like to respond to it with this clarification. So it's not a fashion. It's the realities of certain scholars, a wide range of them, not limited to Africa, as a matter of fact, but those from the global South in general, as well as marginalized spaces in North America and Europe. That's saying that knowledge must be taught, not from what has been defined by Western education as the discourse, or discourse points, but from several cultures, from every culture as relevance to the topic at hand.
Well, thank you so very much. Thanks for that. You were raising your hand as well before then. Because I'll be going to Dr. Oshonuga now, but you raised your hand earlier. Do you want to hold off the question till I come back from him, or do you want to ask your question now or make your contribution now?
Sorry, that's a legacy hand.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We'll still come back to you because I've got to ask you a few things because these things we're talking about also bring me into quite a few things about the storyline of Tinsel as well. And, quite culture projection within it as well, but I'll come back to you on that, so let's go to Dr. Oshonuga now. Doctor, please, if you just want to go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I so much appreciate that perspective regarding decolonization. One problem that has happened over the years, like the lady who's studying at SOAS mentioned, that the A in SOAS has disappeared. It's not as it's beginning to disappear, it has disappeared totally. All these institutions are only using the names, as a catch phrase, so to say. So, for instance, let me just give an instance of what happened some years ago at SOAS. When some students protested that a particular lecturer was appointed to teach them certain African courses where the lecturer has not got the expertise. Whereas when they, went to appoint people into that post, there are African scholars, renowned African scholars who are more than qualified to teach that particular course. But the institution went the way of the European scholar because of the agenda we are talking about. So we as Africans, our rich people, they need to come to the rescue at this particular point in time, because I don't expect, you don't expect me to put my money into where I don't have any interest. Right. That's what is happening in UK, I would say. That's what is happening, why we don't have value for all these things we teach here. But beyond that, as teachers of Yoruba language or any other African languages, we can do more by actually looking inward into people who can promote the language in respective places we work. I've had nasty experiences about bringing people to come and support the teaching of not just Yoruba language, but Nigerian languages at SOAS. I knew what I've done. But when you get to our people who are very rich, they tell you, what am I going to get from that? Mm-hmm. What interest will it yield? Whereas when you went to other Asian, Korean, and all that, they easily brought their money and put their money into the institution. So I think if there's any network, if there's any platform that we can use to drive this agenda, that would be helpful. Because you can't teach me my history, you can't teach me my language. Right. I wasn't born in Europe, I wasn't born in America, I was born in Nigeria. So you can't teach me those things. I have to teach you. But we have a system whereby we bring people who don't have the background, the knowledge, because they've gone to higher institution, they've acquired a master's degree in respective subject area, they are qualified to teach. Because of what? Because of their background.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Oshonuga. I really, really appreciate you, sir. There's a particular aspect, because I know that Samantha has actually responded to quite a few things that Tosi and Saulu said. But that other aspect of the faculties in the School of Oriental and African Studies, it's one of the things I would believe that there might be one or two people out there who just want to know what could be the reasons behind that. So we'll come back to you on that. But Dr. Odutola, I want you to respond to this. And in addition, I think Amanda has put something in the chat as well. Good points, both Tosi and Samantha. I think it's important to contextualize where, how, and with word-specific politics, the decolonizing agenda is established, promoted, and how it's picked up elsewhere. For example, the Fallist movements in South Africa from the past 5 or so years have been crucial. So these are some of the things. And Dr. Shonuga, and this is for you too, Dr. Odutola, I did see something on Dr. Shonuga's school's website talking about the Yoruba having evolved from a Niger-Congo foundation. For me, I found that new, and that is where I also agree with Dr. Shonuga saying, people thinking, you know what, I'm Yoruba, I've been Yoruba all my life, why do you want to teach me Yoruba? I am just finding out today for the very first time, and just by accident, that it's got a Niger-Congo roots. In addition to responding to all the questions, Dr. Shonuga's question, Samantha's take, Tosin's take, Dr. Shonuga's one, Amanda's one, and I'm also interested in that aspect. So, Dr. Odutola, over to you, sir.
Well, this is, thank God that Yoruba people have warned us that if you pull a twig, it will pull the shrub. No, this is where we are now. We're getting further and further away from the question, because these are all ancillary issues that go with knowledge production. Everything that we're saying now is going with the whole idea of knowledge production. Whose knowledge is privileged and whose knowledge is marginalized? And is it possible for those at the margins to speak to those at the center, just like those in the center have always spoken to those at the periphery? You know, this whole question of decolonization, of post-coloniality is all about that you cannot just privilege one section of the world as the producers of knowledge and the rest of us as consumers. You're not getting the fullness of knowledge for what knowledge is. You know, if we were going to go into the jargons of the humanities, we'll be talking about epistemology, the science of a study of knowledge, of what you know. So when you got into that aspect of Niger Congo, these are what linguists do. There is a family of language, the phylum that it belongs to, and they've done that. You know, when you study it, yes, a lot of Europeans were the first ones to actually sit down and look at what connects all of these languages together. They're not saying that you as a Yoruba person, your origin is Niger Congo. No, they're saying that the language, due to similarities and dissimilarities, belong to this phylum and belong to this family. And even there's one called the Yoruboid. So yes, the technicalities of all of that, the linguistics, is not my area. I am strictly for the study of a language, of the Yoruba language. But that does not mean that all of our neighbors, of the various ways in which they say things, it's of interest to us. It's of interest to us to know that the French, when you say thank you, they say de rien. We want to know what the de rien means. You know, think little of it. We know that in German, when they say donkey or danke, they say binteschön. We want to know what the binteschön is, so that when we say kotokwe, eshe, and we say kotokwe, we also have a sense of what it is. So I'm saying, as a language teacher, yes, I also look into my neighbors to find out what they're teaching, how they're teaching, what it means. So the question of decolonization is very important. It's very important. What my intervention was that I'm not sure, and I might be wrong on this, that it has taken the kind of favor that it has taken in Europe, in America, in the United States, for example. You know, there are scholars that are looking at it. I have attended a few, but in the place where I belong, I'm not sure that it's become a concern. What I would look forward to, the agenda I would look forward to, is a synergy between the Latin American studies and the African American program, to see how I can find a space in what they're doing and in what they're teaching. Because yes, some of these things have its origin there. Now, talking about SOAS, Professor Odutola he's an insider. The same thing with Tosin. They're insiders to the story. If they tell you that the A in SOAS is disappearing or has disappeared, we should believe them. And there's a reason why it is so, why the whole disappearing is happening. And the other side of it is also they are raising funds, and they can see how, when it is time to raise funds for the Asians, they see that the elites rise up. When it was time to raise funds for the Hausa program, the Hausa elites rose up. When it was time to raise funds for the Yoruba, I think the Oni made a few dance steps. I just cannot tell you whether those dance steps resulted into something. So when you are confronted with a situation like that, what do you do? How do you respond to it? When the elites who own the language, who own the culture, the custodians, are not responding. But the other question you should ask is that should the elites put their money where they cannot even have control of the program? So these are very interesting issues. The only thing is that, for me, I would like to focus a little bit more on what I have done, what others have done. And I have the last piece, which is when maybe the last 10 minutes we're ready to go, is an entertaining piece of the kind of things I do with Yoruba words and particles. So that's in a nutshell where I would like to.
Thank you so much, sir. I know you've touched on quite a lot of these things, but I'm taking you back to what Prof. Amma wrote. Talking about and which Samantha and Tosin talked about as well, about the colonizing agenda. And of course, there have been quite a lot, is that one of the areas that you believe that you are on assignment, let's say angel on assignment here, in America? And if yes, what are the challenges and what is the perception of the movement? There's quite a lot of conversations going on in there. Amanda has put quite a lot in there. Samantha as well. They professors, respectfully, the professors have put quite a lot there. So those are some of the areas I wanted to touch on. Now I'm going to go to a few members of the panel just so we don't. So I know at times it could awe you a bit when you have quite a lot of professors, reputable ones, senior doctors, literary giants really trashing a topic. Then it is not unusual to consider yourself a Lilliputian and you just go like, where do I start from? I'll rather keep quiet. So I believe they're quite being quiet here. Mr. Abidemi Onojobi, have you, Mr. Odutola, Fayemi, Second, do you have anything to say, any contribution on this? Any of you, or Eugene and Luke?
Good evening, Mr. Komera.
Good evening.
Yes, I sincerely want to thank the erudite scholars that are on this platform this evening. There's no doubt to confirm that they've dealt seriously with the topic under discussion. They've opened our eyes to even issues regarding language and linguistics that many of us are not even thinking in that direction. So as for me, I don't have a contribution, but rather to say that if a language can be well celebrated even in the Western world than what is obtainable in Nigeria, it is better for us to look in depth to how best we can, package our culture, package our language, and see how best to impart the younger generation and even the generation unborn. But the fact that I can just take away from the discussion this night is that there is prosperity in the genuity of our culture. There is prosperity and there are better limelight in what we stand to offer as a culture, even in Nigeria or Yoruba land. I heard him talking about Ekiti, talking about Ijebu. The ingenuity in the way we dispense our culture is something that should be celebrated across the shores of this world. So what I just need to do is to appreciate them for opening our eyes to many other things that ordinarily we are not thinking in that direction. And it's a pleasure having them on board. And we always want to clamor for having them once again, even on this platform. Thank you so much, sir. We sincerely appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bidemi Onojobi. I think Bidemi Onojobi actually Dr. Odutola for quite a while. The last time Dr. Odutola was there, so Bidemi He's a very, very senior banker in Nigeria, but this to me appear an area where he seems to have an interest. Mr. Onojobi.
Good evening, Mr. Convener. Dr. Odutola and the rest of the panel. Good evening, everyone. I must thank Dr. Odutola and every other contributor for the enlightenment that they have given us tonight. I am actually interested in that concept of decolonization, and I want to ask a question. There's this wave of indigenous studies and development course that we see around. I think it's only UI that's currently offering it in Nigeria. How does this help this decolonization agenda? And how, because I'm fascinated by the course because they talk about ethnomedicine, indigenous commerce, indigenous communication, and a whole lot of things. And for me, I think that's one beautiful way to bring the value we contribute to the global environment to the fore. So that it's not, because there's this general misconception that the Africans and the Blacks generally are consumer and they are not producer, more or less like we are not bringing value to the table, which I disagree with, right? Just like you have said, the concept of Ajo, Esusu, Agbaro, and all of those things that drove the way we built community, we built commerce, and how we develop our culture and our own civilization before we were sold the white man's civilization, which unfortunately led us to abandon us to pursue the other man's farm. Basically, I just want to know how that can help. And I think one of the panelists made mention of our rich men or even business establishment funding this, right? I also want to ask, rather than funding in the studies abroad, can we even get people to fund the deployment of indigenous studies in Nigeria University? Let's even, they say charity begin at home. The people that we are losing people at home. So before we go for evangelism, let's ensure that the church is together first before reaching out for evangelism. That's my point, sir.
You really made some very interesting points here. That IK, indigenous knowledge, it's sometimes under the table and under the radar. You just said it now that UI is about the only place, but as far back as 1996, when I first met a man called Dr. David Ake. David Ake is a human geographer and one of the, from, I think, University of Ilorin or so. Maybe he's now in Kogi, but he's now a politician and is the head of the Afenifere and all of those groups in Kogi State. It was from him I first heard of the indigenous knowledge thing. But the thing is that, yes, it is studied at UI, but what is the applicability of it? And how can it be scaled up? Yes, I'm sure Samantha here would tell us whether having such a course would make a dent in the colonization agenda. The colonization agenda is multiple folds. And it is like bringing the voices of those at the periphery, bringing their voices to be heard in the center. But what you will probably be told at this point, the indigenous knowledge of ethnomedicine, where there's nanotechnology, because all the vaccination we all had, there are people talking about the use of nanotechnology within it. So the thing is, how can we mainstream this knowledge? If I ask how, then there's going to be the question of Who is going to do it? You know for sure that the 53 African governments have no interest in the reformation of education. They have no political will. It serves them right to rule over imbeciles than enlightened citizens. And the colonial agenda and the colonial legacy of education serves our rulers for now perfectly well. I stand to be corrected if anybody thinks that an enlightened citizenry of the kind Tosin was talking about, the NSAS movement generation, if they get more enlightened, I'm sure they will sack people in Aso Rock. They will sack all of those politicians. So do you think that in any way, in any case, that it favors the African leaders? Do you know how long Kagame has been there? Do you know how long Paul Biya in Cameroon has been there? I can go on and on. You know, the African leadership is Oyedile. You saw how it moved from Eyadima to the sun. You saw how it moved from the one in DR. These are issues that tie into the whole question of what is our interest? What is the interest of our elites? What is the interest of the political elites in the question of decolonization in Africa? You got it right. Let us set the house right on the continent. But you know, what I have been told since I came to America is that a human being can walk and chew gum. As we're solving it on the continent, we're also solving it outside of the continent. I don't think that they are mutually exclusive. To me, they are mutually reinforcing. While most of you don't know, you know Samantha as an academic. She's also an activist. You just don't know that side of her. You know, and she's making the kind of efforts that people like this put in and the kind of results they get. You will just, some of you, if you were members of her family, you probably just say, why don't you just go and get a life? But no, they have not stopped. These people are still hitting at it with very little results to show. It is not because they're not trying. It is not because they're not, all these things that you're saying, that they're not interested in it getting to the grassroots. They are interested. But the thing is that, look at the nature of animal we have to deal with. You know, let me leave it at that, because I see Dr. Tola's hand.
They advertise this program to finish at 8 o'clock. We're actually almost on the dot of it, but I can see a few hands and I can see a few comments here and there as well. So I just want to crave everybody's indulgence just for 10-15 minutes at the most, because I want to get Samantha's perspective on this. I want to get Professor Amanda's perspective on it. I want to Dr. Oshonuga is raising his hand as well, because I want to hear from Dr. Oshonuga about this, because these are very key issues. But before then, I just want to make sure that we're not marginalizing anyone here. So I've got Eugene. You've been here for quite a while. Have you got anything to say? I've got Rejoice Abotsa. I just want to make sure. Aluko, thank you so much. I did get your message. Eugene, Rejoice, does any one of you have something to say? Otolu. Okay, I believe there's Kenny and Ayole as well. Okay, so
hello.
Yeah, go on.
Okay. I really appreciate the speakers. Each and every one of them has been a real source of information. There's a particular area of this decolonization process that I think now, I'll be looking from the perspective of a Nigerian in Nigeria, which is the fact that despite the years we've been listening to this thing, there's still very few people who are sort of, should I use the word agitating, for cultural values. Now, I made a comment earlier about language as the language, as your indigenous language, as the language of communication in education. Now, I can comfortably make reference to this because I have seen firsthand the case of a couple of children. They had been raised in the remote part of the country, that's Ibadan also. Then they came to Lagos and they had to go to school. These were smart kids. But for the first 2 terms in school, they had problems because they were teaching them in English and they could only speak Yoruba. Now, it took them 2 terms for them to pick up on English before they could actually catch up academically. And there was no provision. I've continually asked this. There is no provision for somebody who cannot cope with the English language. So you are in Nigeria, you are in southwest Nigeria, which is Yoruba speaking. And then because you cannot speak English or because you do not have the capacity to absorb a second language, education becomes like not your thing. You're basically cut off just because of your inability to speak English. I think this is critical. We cannot be talking of decolonizing the Yorubas without the Yorubas themselves accepting their language first and foremost. And this also ties in to other issues, national issues. When we talk about federalism, it is done in the north. You go to the north, people are schooled in Hausa language. I lived there. You go to school. If you cannot speak English in the north, you can still go to school. In the southwest, it is literally impossible. Can we look at this? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. What I would do at this point is I do apologize. I think we're getting quite a lot of feeds on social media. We're trying to get everything together, and also because of our time. Thank you, Dr. KOLE. I actually saw that. I think Tunde Aremu did, share the, so I didn't notice that there were other things they were requesting. Now, because Prof. Amanda needs to go, please just permit me, let us go to her first, and then we'll come back to Samantha and Dr. Shonuga, and I believe is it Tola Agumbiade, I think he's been struggling with his internet connection, but just so we can round off as soon as possible. But right now, I'll just go to Prof. Amanda just so she can have a say and just she can go. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thanks. I don't want to take up time. I just want to appreciate all these comments and conversations. But what I do want to say about one thing is the sort of several of you have now spoken about the need to decolonize within various across the continent in all these different contexts. But I think one thing that KOLE, you said was about this sort of the multiple ways and places where decolonizing in a very critical, thoughtful way need to be looked at and in alliance with each other. So there are ways in which, for example, to build alliances where people are not getting Zimbabwe, Rwanda, whatever, Zimbabweans, Rwandans, Nigerians are not getting the support that they need from their own states. And it's not that Denmark is not going to support Rwanda. They're busy agreeing with Rwanda to put up places for asylum seekers. But there are ways and alliances to build. So thinking about decolonizing in multiple spaces and contexts and its meanings and having these conversations that cross continents is something that I would really value and encourage. And the last thing I would also wanted to say was about African studies in Europe is much stronger than it seems to be in the UK. UK is in a mess with Brexit and so on. Certainly sort of investments in Africa are very much about what European countries can get out of them. And it's about keeping, people away, or it's about investments, or it's about resources, or it's about keeping China out of, at arm's length. But the other side is that as a center of, as a association of African studies in Europe, more and more centers are actually getting funded. There's big funding in Germany, there's big funding in France, and, in different odd and unexpected places in Europe. And these alliances where African studies, critical African studies is, being strengthened, then these kinds of connections need to be built and mutual support. That's all I wanted to say. And I want to thank you so much for this event and KOLE for letting me know about it. So that's a long say. I apologize for too many words.
No, that was fantastic. I really must thank you. Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much for all you continue to do. And you know what? I just could not control myself. I've still done quite a bit more reading about you in the background whilst this was going on. Thank you so much for everything. We hope you join us next time. We're hoping to have Professor Odutola back sometime in September, by God's grace. We're hoping we can also have you as part of this panel. Thank you so much, Amanda. You may go now. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now. Okay, so I'm going to go to Dr. Samantha Iwowo straight away for your take on this. And Dr. Shonuga, I know is there. I know there are quite a few others as well, but obviously we are definitely coming back, so I'm not sure we'll be able to take Sadebayo Olowoake. Thank you so much for joining us as well. But Dr. Samantha, over to you. And you know, I did, for me, what you did, you know, and just in case there's anybody, because I believe, just like Dr. Odutola said, there are new viewers right now on social media. If you're just joining us, Dr. Samantha Iwowo is, she's done quite a lot of work in the movie production and all things, and, you know, with Mnet. I believe she's collaborated with Emmy and Academy Award winning producers, and you know, and she's done it, and she wrote quite a lot of the scripts for the Teen Cell drama, probably one of the longest running on the Nigerian soap circuit. Now, in addition to what you're going to respond to, that it came out of nowhere. It was projecting something different, and it kind of all of a sudden it built up the onion. If you can put it that way, this was not a Nigerian soap pretending to be American, and you know something. It packaged, the story was all packaged. It was sold out there. How can we translate that as well, you know, to, you know, this same topic we're talking about, the struggles, the travails of people like Dr. Odutola in trying to keep this thing alive. You told this good story with Teen Cell, you sold the product. The product is widely acclaimed. How can we, you know, transfer that same strategy to this as well? You know, thank you so much. In addition to the other questions you are giving a comment on.
All right. Thanks very much. I'll just in one sentence echo respond to the question about the decolonization from within that's in Nigeria and in Africa by saying that I agree totally with what Dr. KOLE has said. Essentially, the weaponization of illiteracy or the weaponization of poor education helps to perpetuate colonial continuities, which our so-called leaders are enjoying. So yes, I totally agree with Dr. KOLE on that point. To Daramola's submission on questioning what we see as intelligence when it is ranked along the lines of the mastery of English language, I also do agree with you, and I think that conversations in Nigeria around this contention is paramount. Do we, as Ngugi wa Thiong'o has said in some of his writings, do we discard students because they are not fluent in the language of the colonizer, or do we find a way to mediate what we call language of acceptance in the course of learning? So yes, I think that conversation is very important. So Teen Cell, I joined it quite late in the day and left I think about 5 years ago. I was one of the writers, one of the over 200 writers on that soap opera. And I think that one of the winning strategies of the writing team is remained at the time I was there, keeping it local, recognizing the contemporary nuances of post-colonial Nigeria, selling the product to classes that are beyond the elite, to the working class, the middle class, to the elite class, while recognizing that we live in a contemporary Nigeria where we cannot shy away from the influences of globalization and colonial legacies as well, and how they trickle into the everyday existence of the people we capture. So how can we translate that to other aspects of our existence, other aspects of the decolonization process in academia? It's again recognizing, I think one of the ways we could begin to think about that decolonization process in academia in Nigeria is recognizing that we live in a world which can never be extricated from the colonial legacies, from the realities of our colonial legacies, and finding a way to merge those realities with the cultural values that make us Nigerians, and approaching learning from that perspective.
Thank you so much, Dr. We really appreciate you. Thank you. I'm going to go to Dr. Oshonuga, and I believe Dr. Tola.
Thank you very much. My response will be very quick. It's just in response to someone who commented that instead of asking people to fund Yorubas in diaspora in America or in Europe, they should rather start in Nigeria. I would say they will not do it. They won't do it. That's just the truth. They will not do it. And I can give just a quick example. A job came to one of the universities I taught in Europe, which was a Yoruba translation, really, of a new estate in Lagos. And Lagos government is funding this project. They just wanted Yoruba names for these streets. And when the job came, I said, why can't you take this back to Nigeria? Take it to Unilag, take it to UI, take it to University of Ilorin, take it to Ife. They will do this job for you. This is a multi-million naira project just to name about 35 streets in Yoruba. Just contextualize them in Yoruba culture. But that's what they did. Then come another one, which is for one of these giant telecommunication companies who wanted to run some translations. And they brought it to London, Yoruba to London. And I said, well, look, even on the streets of Lagos, you'll find people who are going to translate this for you. But they brought it to London. So we have shifted the funding to this part of the world. And that's why I think they will not fund any Yoruba program in Nigeria, except for those schools who still run Yoruba degrees and all that.
Wow. Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Oshonuga. I we really appreciate you. That's a strange one you just spoke about. That's really strange. It's the kind of thing that you actually say unfathomable. You just say it without blinking, unfathomable. And yet, it's just 25 streets. Brought it to the UK, brought it abroad. It's just. But you know what? It is the reality of our existence, and that is why we appreciate people like you, people like Dr. Odutola, people like Samantha, people like all of you, people like Amanda. All they continue to do for the African culture and the African language, the languages of the peoples of Africa. So I'm just gonna give. I believe. We're coming very, very fast to the end of the program now, but just Adebayo Lowake, thank you so much, sir. Let's just give you 1 minute to have a say. Yeah, unmute yourself, sir. Just unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, and I sincerely apologize for joining late. I actually had a clash in Zoom meetings, but I'm happy I could join this. And I missed most of it. Again, I feel so bad about that. But from the little that I've grasped, I'm actually joining you for Amman in Jordan. I would just like to say that we have a privileged Yoruba elite. You can name at least 10 Yoruba people who are billionaires in Nigeria. And ditto for other ethnic groups in Nigeria, you would find people who are of means. And it amazes me how reluctant these elite are in funding a cultural renaissance, even if it is just in reconstructing a bit of our history, if it is in re-equipping some of the, for example, to take the old Oyo Empire, you take the capital at Igboho. I think Alao Akala did a few things when he was governor. But these are things which you would expect the privileged private sector to lead, and especially people from that cultural environment. And I'm wondering how we could begin to interest such elite in taking this kind of thing seriously and not waiting only for funding to come from abroad to help drive a much needed cultural renaissance. So this will be my interjection. And of course, it's not complete. It's something to reflect upon, and maybe at some other time to try to interrogate it deeper. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You know what? I just want to thank you for joining us. Mr. Adebayo Oluwake is actually the communications coordinator, International Committee of the Red Cross, based in Amman, Jordan. Thank you so much for joining us once again. Mr. Adebayo Oluwake is the country communications manager, communications coordinator, International Committee of the Red Cross in Amman, Jordan. We really appreciate you, and you've made a very, very valid points there, Dr. KOLE. I'm just going to now. I'm just going to Ayole Olayinka or Kenny Okunuga. I'm just going to give you not more than 1 minute. We need to finish up now. But before I will go to Samantha, and then Dr. KOLE would finish it off. And that will be it for today. Kenny Okunuga, I believe Eugene, Oluwatosin Adepoju, any one of you? Okay. Just want to ensure that we're not leaving anybody out. Anybody who wants to say something? I believe everybody who wants to say something has been able to say something tonight. So I'm just going to go back to our big guns too. I just want to let's hear something from you about that, Samantha, and then Prof. But before we do that, I'm just going to, by the way, there's a picture there. That's that picture you're seeing. That is Mrs. Modupe.
For organizing this, and I'd like to say thanks very much also to Dr. Odutola for the very inciting, or rather the very provoking conversation he stirred with his presentation. And thanks to everyone who contributed, who helped make this possible. Thanks very much for the time given to me as well.
Thank you so much, Samantha. Thanks for joining us. We hope you join us in September when we have is it part 3 now in the series. Well, you movie producers, you know all the series. We keep going from part 1 to 2 to 3 and go, So thank you so much for that. I'm follow up Dr. I believe Dr. Odutola wants Dr. Oshonuga. It was because Dr. Oshonuga just said something. So, oh no, it's just a comment. The need for investment in the African and
yeah, that's from Tunde Aremu. Tunde Aremu sends that.
Oh, I do apologize. I've tried to scour social media. There are quite a lot of things just there. So nothing stood out in particular like that. So Mr. Tunde Aremu, I want to apologize to you again, please. Let me assure you that the next time, by the grace of God, in September, we would ensure that we take your comment. We're trying to get all these things. Oh, I've just seen the comment now, and it's been there 30 minutes, actually. I've got to read it. what Mr. Tunde Aremu, what I hear from Professor Oshonuga is the need for investment in the African language studies to address the concerns that Tosin raised about schools of Oriental and African studies. But beyond the issue of financial investment, what other intervening factors are there that affect the drop in the level of space accorded African and Oriental studies? As we talk about decolonization, what other considerations are there that place a significant part in what is accorded significant attention? Do commerce, politics, economic control, and quest for dominance in international politics play any roles? Do you know what, Mr. Tunde Aremu, you've actually given a focus to what we're going to be discussing the next time we come here, because you've actually raised a really, really salient point. Once again, I really, on behalf of Pride, I really do apologize. And on behalf of myself, moderating this, I apologize for not saying this before now. But Dr. Odutola, let's give you 5 minutes to close this session. If you want to, Mr. Tunde Aremu's, that's fine. But please, we want to make, this is actually the crux of what we'll be discussing next time.
Okay, I'm going to make this fast because, like I said, I prepared this in a 2-part way, and the second part is what will be our party short. The question about international politics. Thank God that Mr. Bayo Olowake is here. He will deal with that for us. Most of you probably don't know him. He's one of the notable student union leaders at the University of Ibadan. And if you allow him, he will convince all of you that there is only one university in Nigeria and or 2 universities, University of Ibadan and others. So be careful when you allow Mr. Olowake to speak. He's going to praise UI. But let me please come together for Yoruba Language Reflections 101. Today, our attention turns to that tiny word, pa, in English. In English, it may translate to kill. So you have something like, hunger is killing me, ebing pami. Good. No problem with that, because hunger has the capacity to take one's life just like coronavirus can. The difference is that when hunger kills, the body of the dead can be buried normally. When corona kills, it does so in a very dramatic way. Okay, leave hunger alone and let us move to clap in Yoruba. That is pa atewo. Again, I can see how clapping can kill, as in numb the palms of the hand. But when Yorubas use pa atewo, there is nothing to do with kill or numb. It is just the way the expression comes. Now, when we get to pa iton or pa alo, the story takes a different turn. Kill the story? How? Well, in the African American community, when a performance is well executed, note the word, well executed, the audience will say, you killed it. So you can see by extension, the African American carrying forward what is always in them. You know, it's English, but they have that Yoruba expression within it. So killing stories and clapping have things in common. What about making money? What is pa owo, kill money? This is where Yoruba language gets me. How do I explain the act of making money as killing it? What dies when money is made legitimately? Well, I'm not going to talk about hush puppy. Neither am I going to talk about the policeman that helps criminals get fashion. The other places where pa comes in can be understood, as in pa eja, kill fish, or in English you say catch fish, or pa ilekunde, shut the door, pa ariwo, make noise, pa ino, kill the light, as in switch off the light. There is also pa niti, which means to abandon one. Well, on that note, let me kill my mouth with snacks, pa enu, as with ipanu. As soon as I have had my snacks, I can now shut my mouth, as in pa enu mide. If you have any more examples of how Yoruba language kills something, without drawing blood, please share with me and we would have some fun. Well, that was just on a lighter note on all this serious talk about international diplomacy and decolonization and language learning. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Doctor, you are a class act. You are a class act. And I'm happy you did mention the policeman who does the fashion for the crooks and who's and of course the crooks cannot pick up the clothes from the tailors direct. They have to pick it up from the police headquarters as well. It is, but the fact of it is this, because I was already preparing is social media status that not all, to just say that today we have been in a webinar with these Africans that make Africa proud. And even though Africa is not really celebrating them as much as they should, Dr. Oshonuga should be celebrated. Dr. Samantha should be, all of you should be celebrated. And yet we celebrate quite a lot of, we celebrate crooks, we celebrate criminals. And, it has become a virtue, to be crooked and a vice actually to be straight, but I am very, very grateful that when people of my generation look up, we see people like you in the front, and it does make us proud, and we know that indeed there's a future for this country and our continent. Somehow, I believe we'll get it right at some point. Looking up Dr. Adebayo Oluwake's profile, all of a sudden I'm just like having to look up profiles at the same time, and I'm like, why am I hearing some of these names for the first time? These are people that continue to make us proud out there, that continue to do the good work for Nigeria. So if you're watching this, only few people in Nigeria are corrupt, but we're a very huge nation. And I watched the video and Zuma said, the name is very easy to call. So everybody says Zuma, Zuma, Zuma. If something is going wrong, Zuma, Zuma, Zuma. So I believe that a lot of people, they find it easy to call Nigeria. But, with the exception of Professor Amanda, all these who is from Southern Africa, all the other professors and senior people you've listened to, they're Nigerians. And you know what? There's a lot to be proud about as far as Nigeria is concerned. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. Dr. Oshonuga, Samantha, Mr. Adebayo, Tolu Daramola, Eugene, Mr. Abidemi Onojobi, Chief Risk Officer of one of Nigeria's biggest banks, Kenny Okunuga, our DSG, Miss Anu Adepoju, and of course, Comrade Ayole. He's come back. I was looking for you to contribute, but it's too late now. We've got to close the session. I think he had network issues. And of course, our Secretary General, Shola Fayemi. Shola, why not? Let me give you just 1 minute, just do a proper vote of thanks on our behalf, Mr. Sekjen. Close it.
Yes, thank you so much, the convener. I want to sincerely appreciate Dr. Odutola, Dr. Okunuga, and every other person, even Samantha Imon, and every other, the guest speakers who have taken up their time to come to this section this evening. I was just enjoying their atewo, key lights, it was the rhymes was just exciting, it's reminisced and gave us the history of the Yoruba culture that most of us learned in our primary and secondary school. But in today culture in Nigeria, our culture is actually going to extinction. So, like you said, I look off to a scenario where we are going to, reinvigorate the culture, reculcate the culture back into the younger generations, and all of them we appreciate the ingenuity in our culture as a people and our culture, most importantly as a Yoruba nation. So thank you so much, Doctor, and I sincerely appreciate every other person who have taken up their time to to be on this webinar this evening. I appreciate our in-house panel, appreciate our social media audience, and every other, other people who have taken up their time this evening and to witness this session. As it is, we're definitely going to be having another section next week Sunday by 6 p.m. the same time, the same channel and the same platform. You sincerely appreciate every other one, and I so much want to give thanks to the capacity of our leadership, and most importantly, their convener who has always taken it upon himself in moderating this section on a weekly basis. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this session once again. I wish you a very wonderful week ahead.
Thank you so much. Have a fantastic week. Regards to your families. Bye for now.
Recording stopped.